Assalamu alaikum. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So today is a new show with me, Asma Popal. We're going to be on, again, my channel, Universal Finance Academy. And we're going to be with my special guest, Arjana Sanfilippo. And we're going to go over what it takes to get into a theater program, both in the bachelor's as well as in master's, and also talking about study abroad, which I know is which is a program that a lot of people want to go to, but are afraid just because it seems, very costly and time consuming, and, very strange and new. So Arjana, if you want to kind of introduce yourself a little bit.
Hallo, ik ben Arjana Sanfilippo uit San Francisco. Ik ben Nederlands y Italiano. My name is Arjana Sanfilippo, and I am an American, but I am the daughter of a Dutch and Italian immigrant here living in the US, but I am also an EU citizen of Italy, and I now am currently living in Los Angeles, California, but I have studied abroad in the EU and UK as well.
Awesome. So I'm just gonna share my screen real quick so everyone can see my PowerPoint. Again, my show is called Universal Finance Academy. My email, if you'd like to email me any questions or if you'd like to be on my show, is universalfinanceacademy@gmail.com. And my Facebook page is Universal Finance Academy. Right now we're doing a live stream both on Bahar TV as well as on my Facebook page. And then again, this is Arjana Sanfilippo. She's an actress, singer, dancer. She also has her own website where you can see all of her upcoming, plays, musicals, what she did in the past, her biography, and that's arjanasanfilippo.com if anyone's ever interested. Okay, so now we are on, what it takes to become an actress. So go ahead and take over.
Sure. So as far as acting, it's very broad in terms of how people get into acting. Every person has their own journey, but the most common theme, particularly for musical theater, which is what I primarily studied, is to go into a Bachelor of Fine Arts program. Across the board, these Bachelors of Fine Arts programs focus on musicianship. So that's music theory, being able to play an instrument, whether it be piano or guitar, tend to be the more popular ones, as well as being able to sing in various interests, which would be opera, musical theater of a head voice and golden age standard, as well as pop and rock, which is also contemporary musical theater, if you will. So we do study all of that under private voice teachers, as well as dance. In terms of dance in musical theater, the main emphasis is on ballet, tap dance, jazz, musical theater styles, which tends to be a form of jazz, but kind of involves all the standard parts of dance, as well as acting, of which we need to know classical styles, including Shakespeare, as well as improv, dialects, and comedy. And then, of course, as I said, we do music theory as well. And then we also focus on audition technique and then performances throughout, which would be musicals, films, short films, and things of the like, concerts and whatnot. So that's the standard for a BFA. For an MA, just like any master's program, it is a bit more educationally focused in terms of understanding how to analyze and research the specific disciplines. Mine in particular was in analyzing movement, as in dance movement, from a transatlantic lens, because I am American, although I do come from a European background and was studying in Europe at the time. As well as being able to learn how to actually teach musical theater studies in the multiple disciplines. So that's how they differ between a BFA and an MA. And then upon graduation, I did live in London for about a year and a half. And as mentioned previously, I am currently living in Los Angeles, California, and I am a working actress in musical theater, film, and television.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for being on my show today. My purpose is to showcase a lot of different majors, so people can see the opportunity both financially and in regards to being able to fulfill their passions throughout their life. So if you would kind of tell me, what got you into acting and theater and music, and then how did you decide to go into that? And how was your family like? Did they accept your passions and how did your education, how were you fulfilled both educationally, financially, and in regards to your own, personal passions?
Sure, of course. So, in terms of getting into musical theater, when I was about 6 years old, I was actually first introduced to musical theater through just a school program that I was doing. We had an after school musical version of the fairy tale Little Red Riding Hood that I was a part of, and I really, really enjoyed it. At that point, I didn't really think of musical theater as a kind of a career path as much as I just did something fun. A couple of years later, my dad had cancer, was diagnosed with cancer, and I was a part of an after school program, which was Shakespeare plays that were in musical form. And that's really where I got hooked on musical theater as an art form. It did involve a bit more dance, acting, and singing importance in terms of it was a full length production that we are doing. It did take multiple months of after school rehearsals to create the performance, which really had a large impact on me and impact on my ability to kind of handle some of the at home stuff that was going on. So that's what started me there. In terms of my education and why I chose it, originally, I believed I was going to be a doctor. That's what my parents wanted me to be. That's what I was
Like
studying
every
to be. I
every
thought I
parent
was
in the world.
exactly, exactly. I thought I was going to be a neonatologist, and I was studying academically to go down that path. So I was taking all the AP, baccalaureate classes, all of that. And my junior year, one of my very, very good friends who's a bit older than me had applied to musical theater programs. And that's when I recognized that musical theater, Broadway, film and TV could actually be a career that you study as opposed to just something fun you do. So I did a lot of personal research on that and I presented it to my parents actually in form of a PowerPoint because my parents are both very educationally driven people. So I knew that they would react to that well. um, and they're at first they were very much against it. They thought, why would you waste your educational pursuits and how hard you've worked? But I thought of it as a way of, acting is to begin in acting, you need to be young. And I had my whole life ahead of me. If I wanted to go into medicine, I had my whole educational background to that point that was very firm and solid if I decided to change my mind. So they decided to let me have the opportunity. And so when I actually applied to my BFA, because as we'll see going forward, getting into a BFA program is actually quite intensive, that I did have to apply to other universities for medicine. And if I did get into a BFA program and did end up going that way, it needed to be funded financially in part by the university, or I would have another scholarship for that, as well as focusing on another study. So I actually have a second undergraduate degree in writing and rhetoric studies to fulfill my parents' wishes for that. But that's how I got into it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And like now focusing on the fact that you kind of had some background, in medicine and you got that bachelor's in writing rhetoric and you also have, your bachelor's and master's in the arts and theater. Like, are you happy that you had so much education, or did you wish that you only had focus on your theater? And kind of what are some tips you would give to people who are currently struggling to figure out what they want to study?
Mhm. I definitely think that it's important to I do think it's important to listen to your parents in terms of just hear them out. Even if it's not what your heart wants to do, I'm very glad now that I did listen to my parents and I did choose a second career in terms of focusing on rhetoric, writing and rhetoric studies. Because in terms of being an actor, at the very beginning, before you have your agent, before you've booked quite a lot of shows or a lot of films, you do have a little bit of a slower start financially. And my background in something else has given me really the financial security to continue pursuing the arts in a way that I'm very grateful that I have. And currently, with the pandemic being that musical theater performances can't happen, and in general, most filming has been halted unless you have, you know, a multi-million-dollar project that's backed by really some star power, big celebrity names. I do still have a very solid income. I'm able to support myself, and I'm still very successful from a professional standpoint. So I do think it's important to listen to your parents if they are in the boat that they would like you to pursue something as well as the arts. But I also very firmly believe that if your heart is telling you, I want to study the arts, whatever it may be, visual arts, dance, theater, performance, anything like that, that there's no harm in doing it. There's no harm in applying, because the worst thing that happens is someone says no. And in general, that's the nature of art. Just because someone says no at one point doesn't mean they'll say no forever. And I really do think that there are fundamental things that you learn, like teamwork, team building, being able to stand out on your own and be confident on your own, as well as understanding where you are as a collaborator, being creative, but also being a firm and very honorable listener. All of those are life skills that truly are built in a creative environment like theater. And I think definitely shouldn't be looked down upon, because they are very important to any career that you may go in. Even if you go into medicine, ultimately, you still have to know how to be a team player and how to really be there for your patients. So it genuinely does help and apply to multi backgrounds.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, having a holistic, you know, diverse background in education is, I think, something that a lot of people don't focus on. And I think that's really what, you know, gives you character as a person, and sets you up so that you have many, you know, career opportunities in the future. So that's really awesome. Okay, so our next slide, if you let me know which slide we're on right now for you.
I have getting into BFA and MA programs.
Perfect. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Okay. So in terms of getting into a BFA or MA, the distinction there being an undergraduate or a graduate program, truly is twofold. So from a BFA perspective, you do need to have a very strong academic portfolio. You do need to get into the school on an educational basis, so based off of your grades, your letters of recommendation, and the like for any university, at least in the United States. As well as getting in off of an audition. The same goes for an MA, though of course you're looking at letters of recommendation from your professors in your undergraduate, as well as your resume from your undergraduate. And again, of course, your grade point average and how you did rank in your class and in your university. So the academics really do need to be taken seriously, even if you are looking to pursue something artistic. I think there's a very big misunderstanding out there that, oh, artists aren't always academically very intelligent. But in the case of musical theater, you do need to be very, very incredibly intelligent to get in. And then, of course, from the audition process in the United States, there are about 300 slots in the entire country. There are about 30 programs with about 10 slots per program. Of course, this does vary. Some programs take about 15, some take a little bit less, but it tends to be 50-50 in terms of male-female makeup. And out of that, you do need to be completely proficient and to show an aptitude for music, musical theater, singing, dancing, and acting across the board. So the standard process for a musical theater undergraduate degree program would be what we call a pre-screen. So that's filming in a location like your home or a dance studio. In general, you're going to do one monologue of your choice that fits your age and kind of your type, who you are, how you are as a character. as well as 2 contrasting songs from the musical theater canon. And then, of course, most universities will show you a dance combination, about 6-8 counts, which roughly is about a minute worth of time of dancing. From there, they expect you to film that and send that in, of course, along with your standard application of essays, your letters of recommendation and whatnot. From there, if they like you, they'll invite you to an in-person audition. And that's where we have what's called the National Unifieds auditions. Those happen in 3 cities across the United States. We have Los Angeles, Chicago, and then New York City. The most comprehensive, where the most schools show up, including at an international level. So there are schools from the Middle East, there are schools from Europe, and there are schools from Australia and kind of the entire Pacific that do show up to Chicago Unified. So that tends to be the bigger one. And you'll have schools from all over the world, as said, who are there for the in-person audition. So a standard in-person audition would require typically 2 monologues at this point that are different, usually 1 dramatic, 1 comedic, and then 2 contrasting songs. And from there, you will either be invited to a dance call where you're expected to show up, learn the dance combination in front of them, and repeat it as such, or you will not be invited, in which case you likely have not gotten into the school. So in terms of all of that information and the fact that there are very few programs available, out of the schools that were offered, I ended up narrowing it down to 18. I actually applied to 22 schools. So my other schools, the other 4, were strictly for academics. And then I did apply to, of course, all 18 of those schools academically. Out of the 22 schools, I got into 21 of them academically. The only one I did not get into was UC Davis. However, in California, when you are accepted to one UC school, you're typically not accepted into the other. So I was accepted to UCLA as opposed to UC Davis. Again, both of those were academic. And then I was accepted to 6 out of the 18 schools that I applied to for musical theater, which is actually quite high, believe it or not. Most people will get into about 1 or 2 if they're lucky out of the number that they apply to. And that was for my undergraduate. And then for my master's program, since I had already gone to a musical theater program, I knew that there are very few things that I really wanted to hone on. For me, I wanted to do something a bit more academic, and I wanted to apply a full season of professional work, as well as more teaching experience if I would prefer to do teaching in the future. So I applied to 6 master's programs. They were all in the United Kingdom, between Scotland, Wales, England, and Northern Ireland. I ended up getting into 5 out of the 6. The only one I did not get into was a school in Northern Ireland, and I ended up settling for my BFA on University of Utah in Salt Lake City, and then for my master's degree, Royal Conservatoire of Scotland in, of course, Scotland.
Yeah, so that's, really impressive. It takes a lot of, determination, hard work. I just had to ask, did you have to develop your dancing and singing and acting skills ahead of time before you got into your bachelor's degree? I mean, how did you do so? Did you have to pay a lot of money for that? Were there programs within the master's or the bachelor's program that allowed you to get those skills? Or how did you obtain those skills in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in terms of musical theater, there is an expectation that you do have a background in all the disciplines. Now, of course, there are always those people who are just brilliantly talented who don't have a whole lot of background. For me, I took private voice lessons, which were very kindly funded by my parents, from the age of 15 until 18, which is when I applied. And then, of course, within my programs, there were private voice lessons that were offered as part of the coursework. But I've always been a natural singer. I've been singing since I was, and since I could talk, truly. And it was always something I very much enjoyed. I would say singing is my first passion. In terms of the musical sense of actually being able to perform an instrument, understand music theory, I've been playing piano since I was 7 years old. Not every musical theater program requires you to be compulsory in music. You do have to know music theory, but in terms of playing an instrument, that does vary. But I had that skill for quite a while. And in terms of dance, it was something that I did quite often throughout school as a hobby. But I truly started studying dance from a more intense perspective around 15. And that was done through a dance studio in my city that I grew up in. And I personally funded that through my part-time job that I had. So because I was funding it myself and I was under the age of 18, I actually got a grant through the dance academy in my town. So I was paying the equivalent of what was about 50% off each class in particular. And then in terms of acting, I actually never had a formal acting class until I was enrolled in my program. Again, acting for me was something that always came quite naturally. Certainly I was not, perfect at it by any means, but I didn't find very many acting classes that I felt were of interest while I was still of elementary up to high school age, as well as not really having truly the time to do it between AP classes, dance classes, performing in musicals after school. There really was something that had to go. So for me, it was acting. In general, a lot of people will go to summer programs around the world. I know in Australia, it's very popular to go to kind of like a summer theater camp. In Europe, it's very popular to have it as part of terms at your school that you go to just throughout year round. In the United States, it's really kind of an after school activity that most people will do. It's not super widely popular in school, but there are summer camps that are available. They just tend to be quite costly. We're looking at about $7,500 to $10,000 for about 6 weeks of camp during the summertime, which for my family was not something financially viable. So I did not do that. But those are kind of the basic skills that I built up to go to these programs.
Yeah, so that sounds, again, a lot of work, a lot of determination. I guess we can now kind of go, you talked a lot about the cost that you had to, the time cost, you had to try and get financing for lessons ahead of time in your high school, when you were in high school. But now we can kind of try and see how much that would cost if you're going into like a bachelor's degree. But for a lot of people who are, watching right now, who are in high school or in elementary school, who love the arts, think about the costs that you're going to have to face. Even in high school, think about the fact that if you really want to get into good programs, you should try and take AP and IB classes so you can get college credit, or at least concurrent classes so you can get college credit ahead of time so you spend less. But also focus on the fact that you have a lot of options, and even if you might not be able to finish theater in high school like Arjana, you still have the opportunity later on once you do go into college. So I'll go ahead and share the screen real quick, and we can go ahead and talk about the cost that you had to go in obtaining your bachelor's degree.
Okay, so this is the cost currently at the University of Utah for a musical theater program. As you can see on this particular slide, we do have resident costs, which means someone who is living in Utah currently and has a parent who's working full-time in Utah, versus non-resident, which I fell into originally as someone who had parents in California outside of Utah, but was a citizen of the United States. Please keep in mind that international students do have additional fees on top of this, just for the sheer fact of transitioning their money into American dollars, as well as any sort of additional fees you may have for visas. This being said, I went to what is considered a middle of the line cost for musical theater program. Of course, every musical theater program in the United States has its own various costs in terms of if it's a private school, public school, flagship university, etc. Now, for me, these are the general costs that it would look. So had I gone to the University of Utah with no financial help whatsoever, it would have cost me for my 4 years of my degree $47,000, 300 or $47,352, not including my additional degree in writing and rhetoric studies. And then, of course, there are additional fees involved. So that is for private voice lessons, your accompanist, and then, of course, additional fees involved with your dance room, additional dance teachers, additional private lesson fees that total around $6,200. Now, that being said, I did get a full ride to the University of Utah from an academic perspective, which is why I really encourage all of you to truly put an emphasis on your academic pursuits. The reason that I got that initial full ride scholarship actually had nothing to do with theater. It had everything to do with the score that I got on my ACT. ACTs, when I was going or applying, I should say, to universities, was out of 36 and I got a 34, as well as had a 4.2 GPA overall. And in my class rank, I ranked third out of, I believe we were 336. So academics for me were very important in high school and did end up paying off quite literally in terms of my college education for undergrad. On top of that, I did also get a talent scholarship through the University of Utah, which did cover the majority of my fees as well for theater. So in terms of the cost you see on the screen, that is general, but please know that there are scholarships out there for talent, for academics, for people who do need a little bit more financial help. If, for example, your family does not meet a certain kind of middle class income, there are plenty of options for you in terms of getting financial sponsorship.
There we go. Yeah, thank you so much for going through that breakdown. I really appreciate it. I know a lot of people don't think about the extra additional fees that they'll face if they, want to go to a different school in a different state. And unfortunately, that is the way that education is currently set up. But again, there's so many opportunities, like you were saying, through, partial or full ride scholarships, through getting into specific programs where you can get grants, federal aid, FAFSA, and then, just focusing on the fact that even if you don't get into, your dream school, if you still have to stay in your home state, the financial cost of it is going to be, usually half as much. And you'll still be able to go to that school maybe in the future, or you'll be able to find opportunities within your home state that will get you, to another country, to another state where you have better career opportunities, etc. So don't think that if you have to stay in one place at the moment, it's fine. You still have many opportunities ahead of you in the future. So
It is absolutely true.
So I kind of wanted you to go into a breakdown in regards to, just beyond school, beyond tuition, what does it take to get into theater? What do you, beyond like your lessons, what do you have to buy to be professional, to, to show that you are there, you're well groomed, you have all of the technological capabilities, etc. That shows that you are, a professional and that you're willing to work hard and spend money to, get where you need to be, basically.
Of course. So one of the big things that is, I would say, very underrated in terms of entertainment is that who you are as a person is your business. So what you look like is very important. How you speak is very important. And of course, what you bring to the world is important. So in terms of musical theater, I always like to say that I have two wardrobes. I have my just Arjana as a daily person wardrobe, And I have my Arjana as an actress wardrobe. So in that, we of course need dance wear, and appropriate dance wear goes everything from tights, leotards, activewear. What's very popular in musical theater is Lululemon activewear, which is a bit costly. Of course, that's not something that's necessary. It just tends to be kind of industry standard. Of course, through there, we do need appropriate footwear, which is ballet slippers, tap shoes, jazz shoes, and sneakers, character heels for women, typically tan and black. For men, it's typically just black dress shoes, rehearsal skirts, and the like. So that in general will total you around $1,500. Keep in mind that $1,500, though it does seem quite expensive at the outset, you do collect that over time. It's not an upfront cost, and it is something that you're looking to invest in long term. What I can tell you is out of my 4 years of my undergrad, I bought ballet slippers twice just from overuse. I was dancing about 6 days a week consistently all 4 years. But my tap shoes, jazz shoes, and sneakers, character heels, all of that did last me through all 4 years and through my master's and present. So it was a strong investment. In terms of stage makeup, you're looking anywhere from about $50 to $120 a year. The reason I left it at 120 is because it depends what kinds of shows you're in. I was in Cats my senior year, which of course needs a lot of face paint makeup. Things that you're not going to wear every day, like whites, blacks, tans, reds, oranges. So those were a bit more costly, but do, of course, now that I have them in my kit, I don't need to continuously repurchase. In terms of audition wardrobe for the film and TV auditions, for singing and acting auditions, the typical is having two professional dresses. Typically, they're going to be solid color. I have two that are actually in blue because that tends to be a color that looks good on me and makes me stand out. And then having one skirt and one blouse as a woman and one set of dress pants is very important because we want to make sure that we can dress professionally for the character that we're going for. Not every character that you'll go up for will be a dress or skirt kind of character, but in general, that tends to be industry standard. I put $250 for that because it's not important that you buy top of the line dresses for that. I had plenty of friends who bought that at more budget stores. For example, on the West Coast, we have Marshalls, Ross, which are stores that carry higher end clothing, but at a more affordable price. But that being said, some people do choose to purchase top of the line clothing for that, since it is more of an occasion outfit. So that can range a bit higher. In terms of regular grooming, that's very important. Again, because of what you look like is your brand. For men, they are getting regular haircuts. Some men keep their facial hair, others remove it. In the case of hair color, haircut, threading, making sure that you have proper makeup at all times. I did maintain my hair being a light blonde all the way throughout the time. Now, as you can see, I have a darker blonde, light brown hair color. This is currently for a role that I'm in. And that is something that does, of course, cost upkeep. For me, in general, it was around $450 a year because my hair is naturally around this color that it is right now. So to maintain light blonde, I was getting my hair done about 4 times a year. And then, of course, regular grooming, just in general, everything that you'll need will total a little bit more. We also need headshots in musical theater. Now, for me, I was very lucky. My mom does photography on the side. So for me, headshots were essentially no cost because we were able to take them on our own. But most of my friends, the general industry standard that they needed to take headshots, which truly you only need to update as your look changes. So for me now, with darker hair than what I typically have, I do need a new set of headshots. Those will range about $300. And you do need those for all 4 years of school. And then, of course, and finally, something very important, particularly now for musical theater and film and television artists, is the capability to create your own self tapes. That is done with, of course, a laptop, editing, filming, microphone capabilities, ring lights, and the like. That is about $2,500 of upkeep. Again, that tends to be more of a one-time cost. As time goes, of course, you will need to update your laptops and whatnot, but overall, that's not a cost that will be reoccurring. So there are a significant amount of additional costs needed for this career path. But if you would like to think of it in terms of any sort of professional job that you would have would require regular grooming, most jobs do require laptop editing capability, and most career paths as well would require a professional wardrobe. You are looking at the standard of what it would cost to be about a business student as well.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I'd like to go a little bit more into, in regards to the actual apparel as well as the technology that you need to use for your program. So what would you give like tips or recommendations for, students who, maybe in like a lower socioeconomic background, they want to dress professional, but maybe they might not have the money to go to Lululemon or to go to more of the higher end places. Like where would you suggest they start in getting the bare minimum basics? And then how do you think, especially with technology, it's so expensive, like do you have any specific brands that you think are really great? Or are there ways that you can be more cost efficient depending on your kind of financial background that you might have?
Of course, that's a very valid question. So, in terms of wardrobe, first and foremost, personally, I am not a top of the line kind of shopper in general. I do tend to lean towards more budget friendly stores. H&M has a brilliant line of clothing that can work for auditions, no problem. And if you do shop based on season, I tend to find that the more professional wear, if you will, tends to go on sale around springtime. Typically, autumn and winter collections tend to be a bit more professional, a bit more jewel tone, which works for most people. And you can get things as low as, at least in the United States, anywhere from about $5 to $25 for something that regularly would be anywhere from about $50 to $80. My I wish I had it with me right now. My very standard musical theater audition dress that I wear actually cost me only $20 from Macy's, and I did get that on a clearance sale. What I highly, highly recommend is searching at companies like ASOS that are online. I know that is also quite a universal and international brand. And you can flag on that website, particularly things that you like the look of, and it will email you when they go on sale in your region. That is something that can truly help. In terms of your dance wear, anything dancewear related, oftentimes people will be in a show, for example, that needed tan character heels, but maybe dance isn't really what they're good at or where their strength is. And so after they finish that show, they really have no need for them. They'll sell those shoes secondhand with barely any wear for them, anywhere from around about $10 to $30 for them, just depending on, of course, the brand, the length of wear, etc. Facebook Marketplace is very helpful for that, as well as if you are a Facebook user or Instagram user. On Instagram, searching hashtags under actor, actress, dancer, things of that like, you'll be able to find people who do have things for sale. And then same on Facebook Marketplace, if you search a dance wear or any sort of, character heels, tap shoes, anything like that, they'll pop up for a more affordable price. In terms of venue and being able to make self tapes and whatnot, I strongly recommend just looking for blank walls, either in your home or if you do have a school that has a school theater, just trying to work around times that it doesn't have a class in it. I know after school is a very popular time where people aren't necessarily using their theaters or using, say, that space, and you can very easily grab a corner of it for free that you can perform in. iPhones work incredibly well for self-taping. It's actually what I use for all of my self-tapes. And it does create a really great performance value. So if you have a smartphone, that is all you need. You don't need any sort of special equipment beyond that. You could even have a friend just hold it still for you if you can't afford something like a ring light. That being said, on Amazon, there are ring lights that range anywhere from about $40 US up to 1,000 plus. It's not necessary to have a microphone or anything like that. All you need is really a good stand, something to just film on, whether it be a smartphone or a more professional camera, and that's about it. Laptops don't need to be top of the line. You don't need a MacBook Pro to be able to do any of this stuff. You don't need an iPad. You could have, even right now, I have my work computer here, for example, which I believe is it's a ThinkPad here. I'm not sure if you can see it. But a ThinkPad is very low cost. It's about $250 US, which for a laptop is lower in line. So there are very affordable options. It does take a bit more work in terms of looking for them and really putting yourself out there to find them, but it certainly is doable.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I know when I started going into my business major, I was so worried about finding, cost efficient, really nice, kind of higher end business clothing, but still trying to stay in a budget because, you are a college student and, you have a lot of other expenses, but you want to look nice. So, having resources, shopping around, looking for sales is all a great way. And then I appreciate the fact that, a lot of people have a smartphone nowadays, but thinking about, getting high tech software and a very, versatile computer and then lights and cameras and microphones, it's kind of overwhelming at the beginning. But starting one place, with an iPhone, then maybe getting a laptop, then maybe buying the software after a couple months, then getting a microphone, lighting, it takes time, and that's okay because that's, what builds your brand basically, is you figuring out who you are and figuring out what you are capable of at the moment, and then planning for the future as well, both financially as well as educationally. So perfect. So now we'll go ahead and move on and kind of go through your website real quick. So if you'll just give me one quick sec to navigate to it. So kind of tell me, when did you decide to create your professional website? And, did you organize it yourself? How much did it cost? Was it free? Kind of the background of that.
Of course. So I actually created my website when I was in grad school. I did the spring of my graduate degree. Now, that being said, most people do wait until they graduate from their undergraduate degree to create their website. I chose to go with a service called Squarespace, but people go with everything from Weebly, which I know is a free web address, to anything like Squarespace, or even hiring a software engineer. Now, Squarespace, which is where mine was created, I had all the jurisdiction to create it myself. In fact, I had to create it myself. So it did take quite a lot of time. It took me, I would say, about 150 hours to design and create and upload everything for this website. Of course, I'm constantly updating it to make sure it reflects what I'm currently doing, current projects. I am actually at the moment getting some new headshots to update on my website. And I recently added my film and television reel. But in general, it does cost me $100 a year to upkeep, which, if you think about, is just a little bit less than about $10 a year, which is quite useful for me as a creator because it gives me the ability to personalize it as I'd like, make it what I want it to be. It looks quite clean and professional in my personal opinion, and I do own the rights to my URL. So should I ever in the future be of a high profile status, celebrity status, anything like that, someone couldn't buy ArjanaSanfilippo.com as a domain name because I do own it. And that's something that I find to be quite helpful. One of the familiar stars, at least in the United States, is Zac Efron. He did not own his own personal URL, and it was actually bought out from him when he rose to fame in High School Musical. So kind of in light of that, it's very important to own yourself as a business, because again, as an entertainer, your person is your business. So that's what I've created here.
Yeah, that's surprising. I actually did not know about Zac Efron like that. So I'm really happy that you know took the steps ahead of time to make sure that you kept your brand for yourself. How much did it cost to obtain that URL?
So my URL is in part with my yearly cost. So the $100 is actually broken down. So I do believe the exact cost is $12 a year for the actual URL ownership, and then $88 to actually keep my website running through Squarespace. And of course, that cost is broken down between Squarespace owning it and running it, and you being allowed to use their software. And then, of course, allowing you to update your own content on it and to add content on it. There's no sort of gigabyte or megabyte on Squarespace, like rooftop, so you can continue to add content as you please. That breakdown is not something that's shown in the direct cost breakdown, but I do know based off of Squarespace's terms and conditions that it's something you are able to do. Whereas, for example, on sites like Weebly, you are only given a certain amount of gigabyte space that you are able to use overall for your website.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm just sharing your website right now for everyone, and hopefully they can kind of see, you know, what it takes to create like a very clean, you know, very modern, and very like thoughtful kind of presentation when creating like an online portfolio or website. So this is her resume here. I accidentally skipped the bio, so I'll show the bio. It shows, you know, some fun pictures of you that kind of show your character, and then, you know, just kind of your background, where you started, and then kind of where you want to go, and then just like a little funny thing at the end, which I like, you know, shows your personality. You're very outgoing. And then we can go to the photos. So are your photos mainly just like headshots, correct? Why are headshots so important when, you know, you're going into theater or the arts?
So we call headshots in the world of musical theater, straight acting, film and TV acting, dancers especially, as your calling card. So it's what you're going to look like. It's what they expect that you look like when you walk in the room. Now, as you can see in there, there are I look quite light blonde, which tends to be my typical look. So that's what they can expect in the room. You will see in my headshots, there's one of me with straight hair. I do have naturally curly hair, and that's how I tend to wear it, but me with straight hair looks very different. So, for example, if a client really liked me, but their character needed straight hair and they didn't say have the ability or the budget to put me in a wig, they can see what I would look like and imagine me in that way. So that's very important for the project. Further down on that page, I have pictures of me in production in terms of stage production, as well as film stills. So these photos that you're seeing right now are all photos of me actually performing live in a theatrical production. And then below it is me performing in film. And those are stills taken and production photos taken, of course, from me live performing that you would see across the board in my various productions.
Yeah, so that's really impressive. I really like the fact that you have kind of everything you've been doing in one area, but you've sectioned it off, you know, for, you know, just for your theater, just for filmmaking, and just for headshots. And you keep it very well organized. And do you start with like, is it chronological for like your theater and the musicals and your TV and stuff? Like, do you start with what you've done earliest, or do you start with what you've done latest and then go back from there?
So I try to do what I've done most recently as the first two photos that you'll see. But as it's a carousel that kind of goes through on my pages, I do sprinkle in kind of everything together after those first two photos, just for the sake of variance. Because, for example, I never expect someone to necessarily look at the entire carousel. So I want them to see that there's various parts of what make me an artist. So for example, in musical theater where I may play a human in most of my shows, I want them to see that I have been in Cats. For musical theater lovers, that also would mean I'm quite a proficient dancer, which is very helpful for people to know, as well as being a proficient singer, which we'll see more in the media pages. So I try to vary it so that if someone were to look at it for say 20 seconds, they'd be able to see somewhat of a range.
Yeah, exactly. That is, anyone right now who wants to go into any kind of arts, creating a portfolio that has really very strong themes and messages, shows your character, shows your various abilities, is what you're looking to go into, but make sure that it's not like all around the place. Keep it professional, keep it simple, and keep it if you were the one judging yourself, make sure that you would be, like, I guess the starstruck by it, right? Like if you saw yourself, you'd be like, this is the person I want in my play. This is the person who, has the talent, has the professional attitude, and has a lot of experience and background. So yeah. So we'll keep kind of showing the other half of the portfolio. Give me 1 second. Okay, so we'll click on media, and then, so I remember you said your voice reel is, the very first voice reel, that's of you singing. Is that correct? Or is that of you acting?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct. So those are voice bites of me singing.
Okay. So let's go ahead and do that first voice reel, and then later on we can come back and look at some of the other stuff you have. So let's see. This is on YouTube for, do you post everything on YouTube? Like ahead of time, or is this like, do you post things after you've created something for like a show?
So usually I'll create something and I'll upload it to my personal YouTube page as unlisted. That way, since of course I'm not the composer of all of these pieces, it won't be taken away or muted from Facebook. But that way I can also publish it on something like Actors Access, which is like, or Spotlight, like you see right there, as well as my website, so that casting directors and agents can actually look at it directly.
Yeah, so how do you make sure that your videos aren't taken down on YouTube? Because obviously, you haven't started making your own content yet. So what are like the practices people can take ahead of time to make sure that they can post things legitimately without getting, in trouble for copyright or anything else?
So I'm a big proponent of, if you can afford to pay the creators for their music, do it. Just a little short addendum. One of the songs that you'll hear in here is not a super popular song. It's at the very end, actually. And I emailed the composer directly and asked, I said, for my voice reel, I'd really like to use this song. Unfortunately, I don't have the sheet music for it, so I can't have a pianist play it for me. Would it be okay for you if I could use it? And instead of charging me any sort of monetary fee that he could have for it, he actually emailed it to me for free, because he was happy that someone was interested in his music. So I strongly recommend reaching out to people, because in the case of that, if I were just singing that particular song, he would have been okay with me posting it all over YouTube, even though I didn't write it. In the case that you can't, which most of us can't, always upload everything unlisted, because then YouTube can't actually see it. And even if YouTube could, with unlisted, you can, only the people with the link can see it. So the reason we can see it on my website is because I posted that specific link in there and saved it. My website is a universal website, so in theory, YouTube could find it and take it down. But the likelihood of that happening is very, very small. So I do recommend using YouTube as a platform, because it keeps you from having to store that huge file of video on your specific website or web page and have to pay for that. But it keeps you protected as an artist, because, for example, if someone came across my website and saw that I was using their music without asking, they could very easily message me through my website and say, hey, please take that down, or hey, please edit that out. And I could very easily do that. Whereas on YouTube, they wouldn't say anything to me at all, and it would just be silenced. So
Right. Yeah. That was something I didn't know about. Learning about, making sure that your list is your YouTube is unlisted. Seeking out, producers or composers ahead of time, and then, making sure if you do have to pay for something, pay for it ahead of time before you utilize it. Give credit where credit is due. So that's really important. So I'll go ahead and play your reel real quick, and we can take kind of a quick break while we listen to that. So I just found out that there isn't any voice playing. So unfortunately, we didn't get to hear your voice, but if anyone is interested in finding her reels, we can, obviously her website is right here at the top, and you can go and show that in the future. So I'll kind of keep going with your website, and then hopefully we can figure out at the end if we can share anything with sound. So right now we're gonna go to the news area if you kind of want to explain why you have that section on your website.
So the news section is important in terms of, again, you're your own essentially media specialist because you are your own business. And in the news section, it's very easy to put little updates, and then you can, of course, post those links to your social medias, whether you have TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, anything like that. Or if you have an agent, it's easy for them to upload that. Now, what I will caution you is, of course, if you have a project that you can't talk about, which I have a couple that have not yet been uploaded onto my news section, of course, keep yourself from uploading those until you have the okay to do so. But updating agents and casting directors on where you're located, whether that be in a graduate program, if you're performing in a show somewhere, as we can see right now, I was performing at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, or if you've just recently graduated, if you've moved. Those are all very important things for your employers to know, because it tells them and gives them a good scope of where you are and where you will be. So the current thing that you can see at the very top of my news section is that I am located in Los Angeles, California, which is important because, of course, if someone, say, in New York saw me and wanted to reach out, they would know that there would be a time lapse between me being able to get to New York versus where I am. So that's why I have my news section laid out the way it is.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I just kind of scrolled through, let everyone kind of see what it is that you had added. You kept it really simple. You know, it was a chronological timeline where you started from your very beginning where you were in school, and then later on as you progressed with your other educational programs, your theater programs, etc. You know, you kept it all with a similar kind of theme. You know, same colors, same font. All the pictures are around the same size. So for people, you know, looking to create their own portfolio or online website, you know, keep this in mind, keep it very simple, and try to showcase the most important things that you want people to read or to see. You know, the saying is, you know, a picture is like 1,000 words, and looking at your pictures, we can tell that you accomplish a lot of things, that you're a very like joyful person, and that you're someone who is very intelligent, very outgoing, and is full of like potential. So I really appreciate how you developed everything very nice and cleanly. So we'll go ahead.
Yeah, aesthetic is everything.
Yes, exactly. So go to contact. So I was actually kind of surprised when I saw this on your website. So why do you have like this little contact area? Is that more for professional people who are looking to hire someone, or do you also have like contact for, you know, people who are interested in the arts or who just want to get to know you?
It's for both. I personally believe it's very important to protect yourself when we put ourselves out there, in whether it be in entertainment, in business, anything of the like. It's very important to make sure that your personal information, your contact information, like your phone number, your personal email address, anything that isn't through in musical theater and film and TV, your agent is protected, because to be honest with you, anyone can find us on the internet right now through our social media accounts and whatnot. And if you don't have proper protection or privacy on those, just anyone could message you, or, you know, with cancel culture going on, people can say really harsh things. So you want to make sure that your personal information is not out there online, and the contact page gives people the ability to reach you if they can't find your agency's information, or if they do have a question for you personally, whether it be about how did you get where you are, or you know, someone who's like, hey, I have a project I'm really interested in you doing. So it's a safe way for people to contact you. And as you can see on that form, it's a one direction only. So they can only message you without knowing what your contact details are. So if you choose to email them back, of course, your email will be included in that. But hopefully the email that you have your contact information routed to is professional, and you would only expect professional inquiries to go there anyway.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm happy that you had that part. I think a lot of people forget that in order to, you know, give yourself a brand, in order to put yourself out there, it's more than just posting photos or videos. It's actually being able to, you know, connect with people and network. And you're not going to be able to do that if you don't give people some kind of communication ability, you know, whether it be email, your phone number, or a way to contact you through like your personal website. So I think that's really great. And then, of course, lastly, you talked about, you know, social media. Everyone, at least, you know, around our age range and even beyond, is currently using a lot of social medias: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, etc. And then, which ones do you think have been the most useful for you? And what do you think will be more prevalent in the future for someone to kind of showcase for like their theater or arts and stuff?
I think it really depends on who you are and what your strengths are. Now, personally, my largest following is on my Facebook and on my Instagram. I didn't want my Facebook on there because I do find that to be a bit more personal. What I will say is that TikTok is very helpful if you're someone who likes to do short little spurts, or if you like to put your singing out there or your dance out there. I find TikTok to be incredibly fun. But I don't find it to be my best I would say, example of who I am. Now, what I will also caution you with is, remember, everything that you put out there as an artist is your brand. So you want to make sure that it is appropriate and that it does represent you. If there's anything that you're ashamed of, that you don't want out there in the world, that you're concerned about, you should not put it on your social medias, because your friends, family, future employers. I have had casting directors tell me that they do look at your social media accounts and will make judgments on if they want to hire you or not based off of what they see. So keep in mind that it is very important, and truly anything you put out on the internet can and will be used against you in the future. So even if you accidentally put something out there you might not be particularly proud of, know that if someone has screenshotted that and in the future you are someone who is, say, very well known internationally, expect that that photo will come back or that TikTok will come back or anything like that. So just keep in
So while we're waiting for Arjana to come back, I will go ahead and start sharing the next part of our screen, our PowerPoint for today. And thank you so much, viewers, for joining us. I really appreciate the time that you've taken, and I hope this is a really helpful and resourceful lesson today in figuring out whether, you know, the arts or theater is something that you would potentially want to major in the future. So obviously, you know, Arjana talked about the fact that her parents wanted her to go into a career that was, you know, easier, more justifiable. There was a lot of, you know, there's a lot of kind of stereotypical ideas on what it takes to become someone who is into, you know, someone who is more in, you know, science or engineering or math. You know, it takes more skills and it takes more intellect. You get paid more, etc. But in reality, there's so much that is available to a person, and we need to remember that entertainment is one of the biggest mass producers or industries within the world. Most of the people, no matter where you are in this world, you are going to, you know, buy movies, buy music, go out to see concerts, festivals, go to plays, go to the opera. These are ways for you to enjoy yourself, but these are also ways that people are able to get a career that is useful for them, and that they are able to financially, you know, keep up with the cost of living, and but also do something that they're passionate about. And she was able to, you know, afford it. You know, her parents, you know, said they want her to get into something more stable, so they helped her with her writing and rhetoric degree. But she decided to also go and pursue that bachelor's in arts as well. And she was able to get the President's Scholarship. So the President's Scholarship is for 4 years. It basically covered her tuition, part of her housing. She also got the Emma Eccles Theater Scholarship, which was also for 4 years, and that covered about $1,000 per semester. So it helped cover part of her fees, right? And then we need to remember that, of course, the government can also help you. So we have FAFSA here, which allowed her to get about $8,000 for 1 year of fees, and she was able to then go and study abroad as well. So the total cost for that bachelor's in fine arts, including scholarships, was $8,000. So she had to take out like an $8,000 loan, and $12,000 extra expenses, audition fees, application fees, flights that didn't come from her scholarships. So it's important to realize that even if you get a lot of scholarships, even if you do get like a 4-year full scholarship, sometimes that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to cover everything. You need to think of additional costs, especially if you're going to be going out of state or studying abroad. And I really want to talk about studying abroad because I think it's a really great opportunity if you can afford it and if you get scholarships for it. But at the same time, if you are unable to, considering right now with COVID, it's not that big of a deal. You know, stay healthy, stay safe, and enjoy what educational opportunities you have at the moment. And then in the future, you'll still have the opportunity, hopefully, inshallah, to go to another country and study. And even if you don't get to study, you can still work in other countries, and you can always vacation and travel. And remember that the most important thing is that you are able to get the most value you can out of your educational degree, not how much you're spending into it. Because just because you're spending a lot of money into something doesn't mean you're getting the same amount of value back. So just be aware of that. And so then she also decided to get her master's in musical theater, and that was a 12-month program. And it looks like she's back, so I'll let her take over.
Hi, sorry everyone. Okay, so in terms of my MA, like I talked about previously, I knew what I wanted out of my musical theater master's, particularly because I had already followed a very rigorous program for my bachelor's. So I chose a 12-month program, which is standard in the United Kingdom. The prices that I have currently listed are for living expenses and tuition. As of course you'll notice, it's listed in Great British Pounds, which of course is what the country standard is. And what you're seeing is considered the international fees. So then I have the addendum. Keep in mind, I am an EU citizen, as I said. However, because I was living in the United States for 3 years previously for my undergraduate in Utah, I did have to pay the foreign fees. I could not pay my EU fees. And because, of course, they're British pounds, I did have to pay transaction from American dollars to British pounds. And some of those transaction fees totaled to about $10,000, which is $10,000 that I never saw, and neither did the university. That was explicitly dollars that were changing from US dollars to British pounds. So that was quite costly. Unfortunately, there was no way for me to choose how that money was actually swapped out. That was on behalf of my university. Personally, I did have bank accounts. I do have a foreign offshore bank account in the United Kingdom through Royal Bank of Scotland, which of course is held in British pounds, just as well as I have my American bank accounts. Now, through both my American and my personal Great British Pound accounts, I do have no foreign transaction fees. So if I would have had my loan payments paid directly to me, I could have actually exchange those to British pounds by myself. Unfortunately, my university did not give me that option, and that's where those additional $10,000 in loan payments did come out. So keep that in mind. If you are looking to study in a place that does have a different currency than the one that you have, I personally would ask if you're a university that you're going to, your conservatory does allow you to get your own payments and exchange those on their own. I know in Australia and the majority of the European Union countries, they do allow loans to be dispersed out officially to that student to be exchanged, whereas in the United States to other countries, the loan does go directly to the university.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that. I myself did not really consider the fact that having, you know, a foreign kind of transaction account or checking account could help you in the future when you decide to go into another country, whether to live there, to study there. And unfortunately, there are a lot of foreign fees that people need to pay and don't realize ahead of time. So if you do want to go study abroad, make sure to think about these fees. Think about ways you could go around it if your school program can help you not pay those fees, or if you can find ways by getting some kind of financial account to stop those fees from occurring. Try your best, because you know 10,000 is a lot of money. It's, you know, it's a car, it's a trip somewhere. So yeah, just focus on that. So let's see. So I know you wanted to go more into just beyond the tuition, other costs that occurred, miscellaneous costs, traveling costs, etc.
Mm-hmm. So I have all of these listed in US dollars. Keep in mind, of course, all these things I had to pay for in British pounds. So I did the translation myself. The British pound is a higher currency than the US dollar. In the time that I was there is about 1.2 to 1.4 US dollars to British pounds. The highest it's been, which was not while I was living there, was about $2 to British pounds. So keep in mind that whatever your current currency is to wherever you're going, you need to adjust accordingly. So I did have the additional costs. I had my BFA, that's hair upkeep, of course, dance wear, performance wear, all of that. Now, in general, I already had that from my BFA, so I didn't need to add additional to that. I essentially just needed to continue with the grooming costs, but I wanted to keep that in an overall total in case you choose to study musical theater as a master's and you didn't in your undergrad. Um, in my degree course, even though we were studying in Glasgow, Scotland, and had a showcase in London, we did also have a New York City performance trip, which of course is very helpful in terms of Broadway. But that was an additional cost to us. It cost about $2,500 to go on that, because we did have to pay our own housing for that, as well as our own, of course, food, meals, flights. What I will say is that for me, it did not cost me $2,500. I have lots of friends living in New York, so I did sleep on their couches, and I did pay for food for them and whatnot, and little things like that. But in total, I had a much less expensive cost than they had. I also was shopping very early on for flight deals from Glasgow to New York. There aren't many inexpensive flights, but from London to Glasgow, there are inexpensive flights, and from London to New York, there are inexpensive flights. So keep in mind that even if the location that you're in doesn't have super inexpensive flights, that there are other places, typically big city to big city, will have very cost affordable flights. General living was about $350, about 150 quid or pounds every month. Cost of food in the United Kingdom is significantly lower than the cost of food in the United States. I'm not particularly sure why that is, but keep in mind that if you are going to study in the United Kingdom, your cost of food likely will be lower than what it is in your current country. But then, of course, one of the most expensive costs that I had was relocation fee, because yes, some people can ship or afford to ship their entire house, essentially, or their living things to the country that they want to study in. For me, that was not feasible. It was actually less expensive for me to actually just purchase my things there. So I flew to London from San Francisco, California, and was in London for about 4 days, then flew to Glasgow. Was in Glasgow about 6 days early before my course began, and I purchased my bedding, kitchenware, cleaning supplies, and other essential living needs while I was in the UK. Something to keep in mind, if you're a female that really likes to do their hair or really enjoys using lots of expensive electronics like PS4s, Game Boys, PlayStations, Xboxes. Remember that if you're studying in a different country, likely they have a different outlets than what you have. So for example, curling irons, hair dryers, any sort of electronic good, you will either need a converter, a power converter that you can trust to use, or you will need to repurchase those items there while you're abroad. So keep in mind what's important to you and what isn't when it does come to relocating, because of course that is a quite large cost. Most study abroad programs do not offer funding for relocation through them directly. However, you can find grants to study abroad through your specific country that you can apply to. So check that out. It's very simple Google searches. You can say like your country name, international studies grant/scholarship, and you should be able to find a few different things that you can apply to.
Yeah, perfect. Exactly. Yeah, thank you so much for going through that breakdown and letting people know, what are some options in regards to affordability. And then I hope this was like a really great takeaway for people who are thinking about doing study abroads in the future when it's safer. Now that you have time, now that people really can't travel, take the time to create a budget and figure out your expenses ahead of time. Think about, inflation, think about foreign transaction fees, and think about your living expenses, the difference between the cost of goods and housing affordability, transportation, etc., where you currently are living, and then if you happen to go to a different country, how that is going to change, whether it's going to go up or down for you. So
Exactly.
I know that we couldn't really play your videos, but I know, again, this is Arjana's website. If anyone would like to, look at her work and maybe connect with her. Is there any like maybe short song or a little acting thing that you could potentially do right now for us? I know it's on the spot, but
I do not have one that I can do at the moment, and that's more so for delay reasons than anything else. Unfortunately, on Zoom, this is kind of across the board, unless something has been pre-recorded via Zoom, it's very hard to actually perform it without severe lag. But if you are interested in checking out my website and some of the stuff on there, I do recommend it. It is a more reliable version of what it sounds like to hear me sing and perform in person. And of course, if you have,
yeah,
go ahead.
I just figured, I think if I just play the voice reel on my phone, there's not really a video anyway, so maybe we can just play your voice reel to the phone.
Yeah, sure.
If I say it's all very well to say you fool, it's now or never. I could be choosing no choices whatsoever. I could be in someone else's story, in someone else's life, and he could be in mine. I don't see a reason to be loved.
Yeah, so what song was that you were singing?
So that song is called Someone Else's Story. It's from a musical called Chess, which came out in the 80s. It's actually written by the same people who wrote Mamma Mia, which is their more popular musical, if you will. And it's about a game of chess between an American and a Russian at the height of the Cold War, which of course was a very tense time in American and Russian history. So it's just a snippet from a character in there. I chose it because it does highlight my voice well, and of course it is a character that I believably could play. So of course, when you're choosing material that you want to put on your website or that you're going to bring into a room, you're going to want to make sure that you do have something that you could realistically play. So if the character that you really like the song from is an 80-year-old man and you're a 20-year-old woman, I'm going to advise you find something else. Unfortunately, casting directors will take that as what you think that you could do. And of course, you're likely not going to think you could play an 80-year-old man, though the song might be very good.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. I love how clear you are. Did you record your music in like a studio, or did you do that, at home? And then how do you choose what songs are best fit for your voice to make the best impression you can?
So in terms of what you just listened to, that was actually recorded in a studio at my grad school, Conservatoire of Scotland. It was free to us students. Of course, we pay for that in our tuition. But the only thing that I had to book was my accompanist, who is a very dear friend of mine. So I just bought her some lunch and we recorded that together. However, let me go grab what I actually record with currently. So all of my SoundCloud and anything else that you see is actually recorded with this little device. It's called the Snowball. You can find it at Best Buy, any sort of retailer near you, and I believe it is listed on Amazon. This was gifted to me, but I believe it runs anywhere from about $50 to $80. And it has a little USB port, so you can plug it into any sort of device you have. They're even as sophisticated as they have things that will plug in to iPhones. There are converters to use this, so you can even record on, for example, the notes section, the voice note section of your iPhone for a more budget and cost efficient item. And this makes a very clear sound. Like I said, if you listen to any of my SoundCloud, you'll be able to hear what it would sound like to record with one of these. So you can make voice reels with these. In terms of choosing material, this is something that does take time and takes a little bit more skill. Now, your voice teachers will help you find these things, as well as your acting teachers, your audition technique teachers. In general, when you're first starting out, what you're just going to want to look for is that people who are your age, characters that are your age. Once you look at characters who are your age, you're going to want to look at things you can easily sing. So you never want to sing outside of your comfort zone. If you can't sing it not warmed up, you shouldn't have it in your audition material. I'm a singer who can sing incredibly high. So I do have in my voice reel clips of me singing very high in an operatic style and me singing very high in a more of a pop rock style. That being said, if you're someone who doesn't sing very well very high, but you can sing very low, then choose songs where you can sing very low. Ultimately, you want to show off your best self. So if your best self is the middle of the ground, sing middle of the ground. Because what you don't want to do is go, oh, I can sing this on my best day, and walk in and try and sing something on your best day. I'm not sure if we'll be able to hear it, but I have an example of what I can sing on my best day that I wouldn't bring into an audition. But if I were, for example, hired to sing this role 8 times a week, I could do. I'll move to the very end of the clip. Let's see if you can. So that's an example. That was just a recording on my phone that I did the other day in a rehearsal. Now, that's a song that is incredibly high and very difficult to sing from a technical perspective. You don't want to choose a song, even though it's really exciting and really fun, you don't want to choose a song like that in an audition. Because in an audition, we're going to be nervous naturally. You don't always know who's playing the music for you in the room. You don't know if they're going to be very good at playing piano. Sometimes you get someone who can barely play the lyric line. So you want to play something where if someone, for example, were just to stop playing, you would be able to continue singing on pitch. So keep those things in mind. But as you grow as an artist and as you're in these programs, they will help you choose material.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I never really thought about the fact that, what a best day, like that concept, when I think of artists or performers, I always expect them to be on their best day. But in reality, when you're going from show to show, audition to audition, you need to pick something simple that works really well with your voice, that's suited for you, that maybe most people are familiar with, so that you can give them a sense of your capabilities. And then show them later on how talented you are in other ways without, kind of overwhelming yourself at the very start. So that's a really great way of thinking of things. And I know that after scholarships, you also had to think about like loans. Sometimes with programs, you either financially, personally, you can't cover everything, as well as scholarships. So, beyond just scholarships and your personal finances, how do your student loans work within your current situation for your schooling?
So I did get, as I have written here, a musical theater scholarship. I had 3 terms out of the 12-month program. That total of 15,000 at Great British Pounds, which was excellent. However, my parents did not fund any of my master's degree, so that came out all on me. I did work full-time through my master's degree. However, I still took out $41,000 in student loans. I did have to take it through my home country. Now, that's specific to the United States. Every country has their own rules. Some students from other countries were able to take out UK loans. But again, that is all country specific. So check in with your specific country as to what you're able to do. $41,000 was for my relocation, my general living, as well as, of course, my fees that I needed. Yes, it is a very high loan, but the way that I was able to justify me taking the loan that I did is in the United States, most master's degree programs are 3 years and they would cost 41,000 or more for 1 year, let alone three. And so for me to have $41,000 worth of debt for 1 year of entirety and getting my master's was actually financially more viable for me than it would have been for me to try and do 3 years in the United States. So it does look like a high cost up front, but over time it actually pays off better for me.
Yeah, that's really important to think about. A lot of people expect, master's or PhD programs to, take several years, and the cost to, sometimes go into, the hundred thousands. But you were able to keep it at a minimal time frame of just a year and keep it at a low cost of just 41,000. And while at the moment it might seem like a big sum, you now have several years ahead of you where you can work full time and pay back that money quickly versus other people who are stuck in their programs for 3 or more years who don't have the time to work either full time or cover their expenses, cover their tuition costs, their living costs, their other miscellaneous costs throughout life. 100% fully, they'll probably have to take more loans out anyways. So yeah, that's really impressive. And then, so, how was life after university? How were you able to adjust going out of, educational institutes? And do you ever want to go back? And, where are your, future career goals heading?
Mm-hmm. Totally. So after, towards the end, I should say, of my program, of my master's degree, we had a showcase in New York City and a showcase in London. Now, I knew I wanted to live in London straight away. I was very lucky out of my showcase. I did actually get an agent directly, so I was able to stay in London. My EU visa also allowed me to stay in England. Now, I currently am still considered what is called a permanent resident of the United Kingdom. That is, are you joining us? I am a permanent resident of the United Kingdom. I will stay as such as long as I continue to return back and keep my bank accounts active for about 5 years. Then I can apply for citizenship. So as of right now, I would like to go back. I have come back to the United States, to Los Angeles, California, in terms of my actual performance pursuits. I have been very lucky in terms of film and television, which Los Angeles has brought me to. As well as, of course, with the coronavirus pandemic, it was better for me as an American citizen to return to the United States while the borders had closed on either end, because this is where my family is. And unfortunately, there were some family emergencies that I did need to come home for, and medical reasons for my father. So I did come home out of respect for my family and by choice. So I am currently located in Los Angeles, and I'm planning to be here for a little bit. But if life were to take me to London or to New York City, or if I were to travel for what I was doing, I absolutely would be open to it. But at the moment, with the shutdowns for COVID, likely I won't be able to travel until probably mid-2021 when things begin to open again.
Yeah, I really respect the decisions you had to face. There were a lot of things happening, especially this year for people, and making those hard choices and figuring out what are your main responsibilities are all that, come first in regards to your everyday living, your livelihood. So I hope a lot of other people realize that, you have a lot of time ahead of you. Don't rush into things. And just because you really want to do something right now doesn't mean you have to, especially with, everything that's going on. Try to be safe, try to be there for your family, for your friends, and take care of yourself as well. And so I kind of wanted to talk about, I was surprised you were talking about how you had not citizenship, but you had what in England?
So I have citizenship in the EU, and that lended itself very easily to me being able to go to the UK without a visa at all. And this was
Okay.
pre-Brexit. So once you're in the UK, if you have a job, you're registered at the local GP or your healthcare center, as well as being a student. So you can be a student or you can be a full-time worker, or you can have both. You can be a graduate and be a full-time worker. You are able to apply for what they call as residency. There's a couple of different versions of residency. Again, that all varies per country and their process, but in the UK, you can be a permanent resident or you can be a partial resident. Partial residents tend to be like spouses, children, whatever of the person who's studying or working full time. I, of course, was full time. And after I graduated from my university, I did have a full time job as well. And I was represented and living in the UK. So I was considered a full-time resident of the UK, and I did have to apply for that. And there were lots of like forms that I had to fill out. Some of them were helped along by my university. They helped us to actually fill these out. Others I had to fill out with my employers. So that is how I was able to become a permanent resident of the UK. And then UK law does that as long as you have an active bank account and you are working or traveling within the United Kingdom over a 5-year span, you can apply for citizenship. Currently, I'm actually on the fence about what I will do in terms of citizenship, because the United Kingdom currently only allows you to have 2 citizenships. My 2 citizenships currently are the United States and Italy. I likely will not take a UK citizenship in exchange for my Italian or American citizenship, because the EU does allow greater and broader opportunity across more countries. And of course, the US is a very large hub of entertainment, so I wouldn't want to forfeit that. So unless the United Kingdom does allow multiple citizenships beyond 2, likely I will not take that, but I'll continue to stay a permanent resident, if you will.
Yeah, so yeah, that's really surprising. I haven't heard of that opportunity before, so I'm really happy and glad that you shared that. So that gives a lot more opportunities for people who might be afraid to go study in another country and unsure of, their eligibility to later on, stay there and work there. And then also if they were able to in the future go back to their motherland or their native country. So I think that's a really great opportunity, and I'm really happy that we got to kind of talk about that. I don't know, kind of, finalizing, you wanted to kind of talk about, what it is in regards to your daily life, especially nowadays with your passionate career choices, as well as kind of your more stable career, and how you kind of blend them in together and just go on with your daily life with, helping your family, now transitioning from that educational state of mind to more of a career-oriented, worldly view. So if you kind of want to go into that.
Sure. So on this little final slide that we have here, I have kind of what my day in a life looks like between London and my life in Los Angeles. Now think just for a moment that the cost of living in London and Los Angeles is actually quite comparable when you factor in the exchange in finances between British pounds and American dollars. Now, my life in London, I did have a manager and an agent. I'm still currently represented by them in the United Kingdom, but of course they don't represent me in the United States. They represented me for musical theater specifically. So when I would audition in the UK, it's whenever my agent gets a call saying, hey, we're interested in your client. So then my agent calls me and says, hey, you have an audition tomorrow or whenever it is, and they need you to do X, Y, and Z. And the expectation is that I show up. So I needed to have a job that would, of course, allow my cost of living to be covered, but as well, that would be flexible for me to actually audition. So I worked at Starbucks' international headquarters in Chiswick Business Park in London. That did cover my living cost and was, of course, a professional career building place for me. The business park is exactly what you would expect out of a business park, quite professional. I didn't need to dress up every day. It was an office environment. So definitely a very stable job. and career to go off of, as well as building my foundation in that line of work in business if I decided at any point in time that I wanted to leave performance, or if I had to leave performance, I would have a stable career path already building for myself. I highly recommend that for any artist looking for something that's flexible, but something that you can also do, because that will help you and allow you to pay your bills. But it will also give you that peace of mind that you can still do what you love, because in general, yes, there are some people who do right out the gate book those big multi-million dollar contracts. The majority of us won't do that. It doesn't mean we're not going to be successful in entertainment. It doesn't mean you aren't talented. It just means that you're like everyone else, and that means that you're going to need to have something to do. Working in a restaurant was not something I wanted to do. Many people do that and are very successful and have no problems with that, but I wanted more of an office environment, so that's what I did. Below, I have kind of a breakdown of what my average costs were. Again, listed in Great British pounds. In the UK, one of the big differences was that the tube was my main form of transportation, which is public trans, whereas in Los Angeles, I do have a car and a car payment and gas that I have to pay for my car, as well as, of course, car insurance and the like. One of the things that you'll notice that is exactly the same is the loan payment. Now, my loan payment was taken out in the United States, and the expectation is that no matter what country I lived in, I would have to pay my student loan in the respective country of my loan. For me, it's $717.70 a month. That is my choice that it is that high. I wanted to pay my student loan off as quickly as possible. The $717.70 is a 10-year plan where I pay every single month. And that would pay it off immediately with my interest that is factored in. That being said, back in April of this year, April of 2020, I still had an expected 9 years left on my loan, but because of deferred interest payments, because of coronavirus, I actually have paid my loan down to 6 years at this point in time, within a 2-year period. So I know it's tough, but when you have a loan, everyone's going to have a loan at some point, whether it's for a house or for education, for whatever reason. Think to yourself what the payment of that is. I have office jobs that have allowed me to sustain myself because of my master's degree and other educational pursuits. And I'm paying it off in a time that a lot of people are unfortunately unemployed, at least in this country. So it is very, very possible that even if you have a little bit of a higher loan, if you really keep your eye on the prize and keep working hard and diligently, that you can pay it off and you will be okay. I'm living proof of that. Again, in terms of musical theater or performance in general, financial freedom is your freedom and is your ticket to auditioning more. So the more that I'm able to work with a stable job and build my savings and build my credit and to pay off my loans, the better my life will be. I currently live in Los Angeles, as I said, which I've been living in since January 2020. So in Los Angeles, I actually am not represented yet by an agency. Originally, when I moved before COVID hit, I was shopping around for agencies and applying to agencies. Unfortunately, COVID hit and the entire entertainment industry, especially in this country, has been stopped. There are not really auditions happening. Theatrical events can't happen because of how many people are needed in a space with an audience. Film crews are very limited. So agencies are not currently taking talent, but in the future, I'll be able to apply and be represented. I'm currently looking to be represented in film, TV, and musical theater, which will be quite attractive to agents because it means that one agent can put me up for many jobs and that I'm actually have reputable ability in those jobs. If you do visit my website, you'll see my film reel of me in shorts on film and TV, just like you can see me dancing, singing, acting, that do show that I have an educational background in that. I currently work at a company called Happiest Baby. Originally, I was hired to be an international business consultant for them. I was going to travel across Europe and the Middle East and negotiate and make sure that our baby products from the United States were useful in those countries and were approved in those countries. For example, In all of Europe, fire retardant is necessary in a baby mattress, whereas it is illegal in the Middle East and in the United States. So of course we have to make sure that we're manufacturing those mattresses specifically for the UK and EU, whereas we're specifically manufacturing baby wear for the US and Middle East. That's a little bit different. However, because travel is down, I do mostly Zoom meetings and I'm helping out the customer care team in the interim. So I am currently employed with a normal office job at the moment. We are working from home, but that's how I afford to live as an actor as well as build my career in a more stable office environment.
Yeah, thank you so much for going over that. I was really impressed by the fact that you found passion both in an industry that you didn't like naturally feel in place, that your parents kind of wanted you to go into, and that also gave you a lot of opportunities both nationally and globally. But you also took the time to kind of focus on what you wanted to do with your theater major and your arts major, and you realized that just singing or dancing wasn't enough. You were able to then go into video and TV and other kinds of auditions to diversify yourself and show that you're a very holistic person in many ways. And I really like the fact that you drove that point. If you are in debt, whether it's a car loan, a house loan, credit card bills, or a loan for education or tuition, focus on the end goal, whether it's short term or long term, and make sure to try and pay those loans off as soon as possible. The sooner you pay them off, you're debt free, your credit score is higher. You are now able to get loans for other things that may be more important for you. And then you'll have more financial freedom to make decisions for other things, like going into another program, going to another state or country, going on vacation, starting your own production line, for example, your own business. So I just hope that was something that really stays in the mind of people. Try and get those loans paid off as soon as possible. And I really like the fact that you took something like COVID and turned it into a positive. You focused on the benefits that staying home and working more allowed you to find more financial freedom in the end. And I know a lot of people right now are struggling with finding a job, paying bills. So try and find all of the benefits, the opportunities, and see if in one place in your life you might not be where you want to be. See in other places in your life where you could potentially grow or benefit or become stronger in. So yeah, I thank you so much for taking the time with me today. I hope this was a really beneficial lesson for people on my show. Again, my name is Asma Popal. My show is Universal Finance Academy. And I kind of wanted to end it with Arjana. What is your message for the youth of today who are facing so many challenges with, COVID, natural disasters, trying to figure out their finances, and also people who are currently in programs or trying to find jobs in theater or art and who are struggling? What is kind of your message of hope?
My message of hope is that entertainment isn't going anywhere. While we're stuck at home, the things that are getting people through is watching Netflix, listening to the music that they love and that makes them feel happy and free, watching YouTube, watching content creators, and even collaborating with your family and looking at things that make you feel happy and nostalgic. Those are the things getting us through these really tough and difficult times. And just because theater isn't able to happen right this very minute, or just because filming is at a standstill right this moment, doesn't mean that's going to be forever. We love entertainment as humans. It's part of what makes our life joyful, and that is going to continue. I think take this time, even if you're in the middle of a program right now and you're really scared, like, what am I going to have to do? If you're looking to go into this and your parents are saying there's no jobs in this right now, okay, take it, listen, let it sink in, and then know, okay, you're right. It's not happening right now, but that doesn't mean next year. That doesn't mean 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, when I graduate and I am working. the average age of someone in entertainment, whether they be a professional dancer, a professional musician, Broadway star, or an entertainer in terms of film industry, is 27 years old. Currently, I'm 25, which means I already have my BFA and my master's degree and have applicable both resume builders from a career perspective in the office as well as a career perspective in film, TV, and musical theater. And I'm still 2 years short of what is considered the average age of someone who gains success in this career. It doesn't have to happen today for anyone. But what you can do is look at all the things that you're good at. Again, remember, actors, entertainers are good at team building. They're good at being confident. They're usually good speakers. All of those things are applicable to any job that you could possibly have. So if you can't do entertainment right now, look at what other jobs might be interesting to you. Teaching is a really big one for people. Teachers are well needed and will always be needed. Look in that, see if that's something that's interesting to you. If you like an office, look at office jobs that you can do from home at the moment that are a bit more flexible. But don't give up on yourself and don't give up on your dreams, because it is needed and it's very, very important. So keep on the path.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. Do you know what are the words to say like thank you so much and goodbye in Dutch or Italian?
So in Dutch, it'd be dankjewel, dag. And in Italian, it'd be it'd be grazie me, ciao.
Yeah,
So
and Farsi, you know, Tashakar, and Khudafis. Yeah, thank you so much, Arjana, and thank you for all of the viewers who took the time today to watch either on Bahar TV or on my personal YouTube channel or my personal Facebook page, Universal Finance Academy. I hope this was really valuable. I hope you learned a lot. Again, if you ever are interested in maybe getting Arjana as part of like talent for any future projects, you know, she's available and you have her contact information, or maybe if you potentially might mentor someone who might be interested, if you'd be willing for them to contact you in the future. And you have her website and you can always watch this video again to look back on details. Yeah, so thank you so much, and Khafiz everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.